Hi, and welcome to another video by Jimthecarguy. Today we have a 2006, it's a Chevy Express van, the 2500 series, with a 4.8 liter engine. The customer complaint is that the vehicle is leaking antifreeze, and after driven for a period of time it starts to overheat. Obviously, because it's leaking antifreeze, it's going to overheat. So let's get in there. I'm going to show you where it's leaking. We're going to diagnose where it's coming from and what we have to do to go ahead and repair it. Sorry about that. So let's get in there. We're going to take a peek at it, see if we can see where it's coming from right now. If not, we'll get our pressure tester. We'll fill it up with just water. We're not going to use antifreeze at this point because it's a waste. You put the antifreeze in, it's only going to leak out all over again. So let's get in there, take a look at it, and we'll figure out where it's coming from. As you can see, it's a little bit tight underneath here, so it's a little difficult to see where it's coming from. I got a suspicion it's going to be the water pump, and the reason I say that is because if you look all the way down over in here, you'll see some residue around the fan belt and on that pulley. So I got a suspicion it's the pump, but I just want to put some water in it, and we're going to pressure test it, and we'll figure out where it's actually coming from. First thing we're going to need to do, so we can see what we're doing in there, is we're going to have to remove some of this this stuff up in the front here. We're going to remove the air filter box itself. We'll take that snorkel tube off. We're probably going to take out the overflow here also, and then we're going to fill up the radiator with just water, and we're going to pressure test it. So all right, let me get the pressure tester, and we'll get some of this stuff out of here, and then we'll continue on it. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take out some of this this stuff that's in our way here. 10 millimeter, obviously, it's just to remove the overflow bucket. And this hose just comes right off. You don't want to just pull it and snap it off. You want to just twist it a little bit first, just to get it to break loose, and then you just pull it off without breaking it, of course. Side for now. Same thing with the air filter box. Just a little bit of the screwdriver, and we take that clamp off so we can remove the air filter assembly. Just pull it off, nice and easy, so you don't break anything. So I'm going to unplug the sensor right here. We're going to take our lock clip out. It is a pain in the rear end because you got to get that little clip right there off to get that out of there. And of course, if it was on the other location, it would be a lot nicer, but unfortunately it's facing to the inside. What I always do is then put your lock clip back in here, and we'll push it back in there later on. We just relocate that to the side for now. Take our air filter assembly out of here. Gives us a little more room, but we'll see if we can see anything down there. Alright, still a little tight. We're going to get some antifreeze in it, and we're going to pressure test it just to confirm where the leak is coming from. So we're going to grab which attachment we need, and we'll connect it up. So let's get some water in it, I'll connect it up, and then we'll come right back. Okay, we filled it up with just water. Now we're just going to pressure test it, and we'll see where it's actually coming from. Still difficult to pinpoint where it's coming from, so we're going to remove the top cover right here so we can gain access to it a little bit further. And the way you take that cover off is you just remove all of these bolts that you see inside here, and I'm going to pull this cover off. So all right, let me get in there with a tool, and we'll take it apart and we'll continue on this. Before we go any further, taking all this stuff out of here, let me get down underneath the bottom and see if I can see anything from the bottom. Let's take a look. Alright, let's take a look underneath here and see. As you can see, there is a significant amount of antifreeze coming out. Now looking at it from the bottom, you can see it coming off right underneath the water pump right there. So we know that the water pump is definitely the issue. Let's remove the water pump, and we're going to continue with the water pump up on the top. Okay, now that we know that the pump is definitely no good, we've got to get in here and we've got to gain access to everything down inside here. So to make it easier, what we're going to do is we are going to remove this cowling right here. We're going to take this out of here so we have a little more room to work, because the fan will have to be disconnected, so we need a little more room anyway. All right, let's get all of our test equipment off of it, and let's get some tools and let's get started. Before I continue with this job, I just want to say I just got my mail delivery today, and of all things, it's not a bill. It's actually from my buddy Steve up in Canada, and he sent me a couple of stickers from my toolbox, or possibly my uniform, or maybe even my hat, I'm not sure. But Steve, thank you very much. Anybody who's watching this, you want to check out a good channel, check out Steve. He does a lot of reviews on different repair shops, and does a great job at it. He's quite a character, if I may say. All right, check him out. You'll be very happy you did. Steve, I'll talk to you again. And thanks for the stickers. Okay, I just want to let you know, we did take out all the screws inside here, and as you can see, this does come up a little bit, but all the hoses and such are in the way and it's holding it down. So we're going to remove this upper radiator hose, just so we can move it off to the side so we can get the shield up and over the top here and give us a little bit more accessibility to it. All right? Now, the hoses on these things here have what they call snap rings on them. I'll show you what I mean. You see down here, it's got this clamp on here. Right here, you have to squeeze these together to get it off. If you have a pair of pliers, you can get in there, but they make a special tool to get in there. It looks like this, and this goes around it, and you can actually remove the clamp. I'll show you how that works. I may need two hands to do this, so I'll try to do it the best I can. Basically what you do is you put this on here. Like this so you can see. You put this on here like this, and then you squeeze it together like that, and you squeeze it together, and then you can remove the clamp. So let me do that, and you'll see how it goes. And that's pretty much how that clamp works. We're just going to relocate this off to the side for now. And we're going to remove this. It's a little bit tight. Okay, now that we got that cowling out, and I might add, that cowling was a pain in the ass getting out of there too. All right, what I had to do is I had to remove the oil filler tube that was in here, just so I could get that to move, so I can get out of there. And basically, what it was is a 13mm bolt was right in there. I took that bolt out, took the filler out from the valve cover, and that gave me a little bit of room on this, enough to pull it out. All right, next thing we're going to do now is we have a lot more room, as you can see, in here. Now, I just want to point this out, too. Before you do anything further, make sure your battery is disconnected. I did forget to tell you that. I always disconnect the battery when I'm working in here by this electrical stuff. All right, so disconnect your battery. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this fan, and we got to break this fan loose. There is a special tool needed to do this, but I don't have it. In the back of the pump itself, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little hole in this pulley back in here that you're supposed to hold it with, but I'll show you how I get it off without using that special tool. Basically, there's a lot of different wrenches that they make to take these fans off. This is the one here in particular I'm going to be using. What you got to do is you just put it on the back of the fan itself down in here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wrench, a hammer, and I'm just going to hit this really kind of sharply just to snap that fan loose from the water pump itself. 90% of the time I can get it off. The other 10% of the time, I just pull out the little hair I've left on my head and just play around with it. So, all right, so let me get in there. I'm gonna hit this a couple times, and hopefully it cooperates and comes right out. Now we know it's, on this particular one, it is counterclockwise to remove it, clockwise to tighten it, obviously. Some of them are reverse rotation, just so you know, but this one is not. That did break loose. And now, like any other fan, you just rotate it off, and we can take it totally out, so we have a little more room to work inside there. And that, of course, is before you take the fan belt off. If you take the fan belt off, you're going to have a real pain in the rear end getting that off. So when you unscrew this here, be careful, don't let it fall and puncture your radiator. Take this out, and we'll relocate this to our pile of stuff. All right, and this is what I was telling you about with the pulley down there. You see how it's got these little bolt holes in there? There is a special tool that slides into there and holds it from rotating. I don't do it that way. I just hit it with the hammer and it pops right off. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this fan belt. The way we're going to do that is, as you know, is just to put a wrench on here, whether 14 or 15 millimeter, and we're going to remove the belt. So let's continue with that. Guessing 14, I'm wrong. It's actually 15. Release the tension on the belt. And then remove your fan belt. Now I might add, before you took this apart, if you didn't have the schematic of how to put it back together, you want to draw it out or look it up on the computer. So, all right, let's grab some tools and let's continue. Okay, now that we have that belt off, as you can see, we are going to change the other belt down here also. You can see that that's in pretty poor condition too. We're going to change that. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this tensioner, which is 2 bolts here. We're going to take the tensioner off. We're going to remove this hose right here. And then we're going to unbolt the water pump. There should be 6 bolts holding it on. And I think we may be changing that tension. Let me talk to the customer and see what he wants to do. And in the meantime, let me get started and we'll see how it goes. Now remember, with that clamp, we use that special tool on there. If you don't have it, you can use a pair of pliers on it too. But we'll give it a shot like this and see how it works there. Sometimes it is a pain in the ass. They're really stuck on there. Now, obviously I have a bucket down below so we can drain this antifreeze into it. Take our tool out of the way for now. I'm just going to relocate that hose off to the side for now. We're going to take our idler pulley off. I'm sorry, I mean our, not idler pulley, tensioner. Okay. Now we are going to take off these two coolant hoses down here. We're going to squeeze these clamps together here, and we're going to take them off. We're going to take out these 3 bolts here and the 3 bolts over there, and we're going to continue. Okay. Now that we have our 2 hoses disconnected over here, the 2 heater hoses, we took out all of our bolts that hold the water pump in place except for one. We're ready to pull the pump off. Water pump out. Alright, that's your pump. That's it. Remember we saw it down the bottom, we saw water coming down right through here. It was coming right out through the face of the pulley right here and out. Alright, let me grab the new pump and we'll start putting this thing back together. lay our water pump back in. The gasket is stuck back on here and the bolts are through to hold it in place. I did clean off the engine itself so that it's a nice clean fit when it goes back together. This, you want to catch it by hand when you screw this back together. Okay, now that we have everything caught, we can screw all the bolts in as far as we can by hand in order to make sure you don't cross anything. Okay, now we can tighten it up. Alright, now obviously you can use an air gun if you have it. Me personally, I like to feel when I'm tightening it up how tight everything is. And just go over it and snug each one of them back down again. Okay, so now our water pump is tight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach our hoses down here that we previously took off, and we'll put those clamps back on. We're going to reattach the lower hose also, and we'll put that back on. As you can see, I did change the fan belt already down here. Very simply, you just twist up on that and you pull the belt right off. Alright, so let's get the hoses back on. This one goes on here. This one goes here. And now we're just going to pull those clamps back down into the position over here where they belong. I'm going to get that tool, and we're going to put that tool back on here so we can slide the hose back on there. I do want to point out that I changed that thermostat gasket that was in there also, put a new one on there with it, and that's it. So let me get those hoses on, and we'll get that done. We're going to put that tool back on here, and we're going to compress that clamp so we can put this back together. Goes back on. Okay, then we can release it. Okay, now I just want to point this out. As you can see, I'm reusing the old spring clamps on here. I do like these because they have constant pressure that actually constantly squeezes the hose. You could put the regular screw clamps on there too, it'll work just as well. But if I can use the old ones I always do like using them again. Alright, so let's continue. Alright, next thing we're going to do is reattach our tensioner that we previously took off. The customer decided he did not want to change the tensioner, so we are going to use the old one again. You want to catch all the bolts before you tighten anything up. Alright, now that we have our tensioner tight, our hoses are on, the heater hoses as well as the lower hose, we're going to come back in here and we're going to put our fan belt on right now. So let me grab the belt and we'll come right back. Okay, remember what I told you about if you couldn't remember what it was to write it down on a piece of paper? I was able to print it out, of course, but if you don't have it, you just draw a picture of it like that so you know. Now we have the belt back on. This is the piece we're going to put on last. You just pry down on it, slide it down underneath. right, then just make sure your belt is all on where it belongs. Make sure that everything is in the grooves as it's supposed to be, all around, including the crankshaft. And if everything is where it's supposed to be, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall that fan that we previously took off right here. So let's grab the fan and put it on there. You just hold it and center it and just turn it until it screws on there. Tighten that up. And we're just going to lock it in place. All right, now fan's on now. All right, so now we have everything connected up. We have the fan back on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay that cowling in here, and then we'll come right back after I lay it back in there. This is just to be pulled up and out of the way so I can get it in there. Okay, now that I laid the cowling back in there, I'm not going to bore you with putting screws back in down there, but you want to make sure all of your hoses get reconnected where they belong or where they came from. All your wiring harnesses are connected up correctly, and so let me get that part done. And then we're going to go right back. Okay, now that we got everything back in there and everything tightened up, I just want to go over a couple things with you. You want to make sure that you tightened up your snorkel down here that connects onto your air intake. Otherwise, you're going to wind up with a vacuum leak, and your airflow meter is not going to even work. So make sure that's tight. Down in here where your dipstick, where your oil fill connects into the top of the valve cover, make sure that that dipstick tube is back in the valve cover. Otherwise, somebody's going to pour oil in it. You're going to have a mess all over the floor. All right? Everything is back in, tightened up. The belt is on. The cowling's back together. We're going to fill it up with some antifreeze. And, of course, we're going to wash all this down with water afterwards just to make sure. All right, so everything is all back together here. And as my buddy Steve up in Canada would say, a real quality guy will have no leftover bolts, nuts, or screws after the job is done. All right? All right, we'll put some antifreeze in. We're going to run it, get this thing out the door, and on to the next project. All right? Like always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, drop me a line. Be more than happy to talk to you about anything. As always, see you on the next one.